Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Armor of Truth Live number 315. Armor of Truth Live 315. Trump sounds nuts. Good night, everybody. No, that's what they're saying. They're saying that Trump sounds nuts. Americans are celebrating the fact that a president has been convicted. This right here's not going to work, is it? I look like I'm going on some kind of...
Looks like you got a cowboy hat on without a cowboy hat.
Without, yeah, it's hanging on my back. Yeah, okay. Chinese soldiers are surveilling the suburbs. That's what Trump said. Is that true? Residents in Chicago have had it up to here. They're ready to fight back, and I don't mean peacefully. I don't mean with rhetoric. Okay. They have a lot of weapons in Chicago. And of course, as we've been pointing out here to you for a while now, maybe since the channel began, the greatest threat to America is Americans. All right, let's look. Let's start off. We're going to get to some of these issues today. First of all, let's remind you that we have a new article that was out. What was this, yesterday?
Yes.
Came out yesterday about regionalism. Again, the threat is not to national sovereignty. The threat is to local autonomy. Right? That's the first, clearest, and most present danger. Okay? So we've got an article there that's explaining what regionalism is and how it works. It's just an overview, right? We want to introduce folks to the idea. And also our previous article, the alt media has failed you. The World Health Organization won a major battle Saturday by adopting international health regulations. So that part of it is a done deal, all right? And we wanted to make sure that people understood that what this actually means. No one has signed our sovereignty away. In fact, the pandemic agreement, if the pandemic agreement is ever ratified in the future too, and the IHR is an exercise in sovereignty, in that it will be your government that enforces it. Again, the greatest threat to American sovereignty is Americans. When we get our focus off somewhere else, that's when we put ourselves in danger. One more bit of housekeeping before we get started here. Voddie Baucham released today this book, It's Not Like Being Black: How Sexual Activists Hijacked the Civil Rights Movement. And man, this really fits in perfectly in timing-wise with what we have to talk to you about next, or coming up soon, the topic that I really enjoy reading and writing about, which is the civil rights movement, and how from the civil rights legislation of 1964 and 65, from that moment forward, that's when the nation diverged into two separate groups. One that believes, that holds to the Constitution originally. Let's say, look at it like this: the way people read the Bible and understand the Bible. You go into the text and pull out the meaning. That's exegesis. When you take an idea and you go into the Bible and try to find it and prove it, that's eisegesis. You're taking your idea to the Bible to try to prove it. You want to prop up your theory with the Bible. That's eisegesis. People do the Constitution the same way. Some believe it's a living document that's meant to be updated as social norms evolve, as morality evolves. And what Voddie has written about here is this is needed. This is very much needed right now. John MacArthur said it's a refreshing voice. Voddie is a refreshing voice of clarity, courage, and conviction in a morally insane culture that's now completely given over to irrationality and sexual perversion. Sexual revolutionaries have purposefully and strategically worked to normalize what a few decades ago was universally recognized as perversion. The dark anti-God assumptions of the LGBTQIA+ movement, Voddie takes it down, breaks it down powerfully. with scriptural weaponry that destroys the serpent's arguments raised against the knowledge of God for exclusive obedience to Christ. Satan's current crafty scheme is to use race as a Trojan horse to bring the gay and trans agenda in, not only into society, but also into the church. And I guess we could say our colleague, someone we like to keep up with on YouTube a lot, John Harris, also was given a blurb in the front of Voddie's book. He said, activists against the created order have used the path laid down by figures like MLK Jr. to promote their own nefarious intentions. He said, Voddie's book offers hope for even the vilest of sinners with inspiring stories of redemption. He's also got a brief chapter near the back of the book on Alcoholics Anonymous and how it's there's a contradiction in the way Alcoholics Anonymous, as the largest secular religion in the world, it's okay to go in and say, I want to get power, I want to get control over my urges to drink or use drugs. But if someone comes to the church and says, I want to get mastery, I want to control this urge for same-sex attraction, somehow that is not allowed. That is going to be made illegal at some point. So you can see that. It's a great book. I've gotten through about 3/4 of it. We're going to put up a...
Yeah, we've read some of it.
Sorry, there you go.
There I am. Yeah, we've read some of it. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good, guys. You're going to learn stuff that you had no idea about, too.
Actually, we do have, I just remembered, we have an article up here on Substack right now where the chapters, the first few chapters, right here, The Mother of Woke, right here. In this article, we quote from this book. You know, we received an advance copy of it, so...
Yeah, we're on his launch team, which you guys can help too. So if you want to figure out how you can help Voddie to spread the word, because obviously there's like tons of censorship, then go to that article there, and you can find all the links that you need to help Voddie spread the word and get his media kit and get a copy of the book probably, or maybe not at this point because the book just launched today.
Yeah. Make sure that you support Voddie. This article will help you understand what the book's about and why it's so important. How this movement has truly divided America, and it sprung up out of the civil rights movement. Okay, now on to our topic for today. Let's start off with this story. Early Monday morning, two police officers in New York, two NYPD officers, were shot. U.S. immigration sources told the New York Post that the shooter, 19-year-old Bernardo Castro Mata, illegally entered the U.S. last July through the same hole in the wall at Eagle Pass, Texas that we showed you here on AOT. Well, I forgot his name. What's the guy who's down at the border? JLR.
Oh, JLR.
Yeah, Jonathan Lee Riches.
Mm-hmm.
What a character. But he's been down there. And we showed you, you can scroll back in the Armor of Truth live shows. We even got an upload.
Yeah, he had like the best footage, and everybody copied all the things that he did, it seems like.
Yeah, he was down there mixing it up. He was right up on the border, showing right the hole they were coming through. Anyway, this is one of those guys. Immigration said that Mata was released from custody on May 6th, 1 month ago. A little less than 1 month ago, as part of a mass amnesty program under the Biden administration. Who is the greatest threat to America? Well, let's start off here. These people believe that Trump sounds nuts. All right, let's. Now, what's interesting is when Trump came out in his after the conviction, he came out immediately in his press conference. He was calling them mentally sick. They're calling him mentally ill. Both sides are calling the other insane, basically. But let's start off and listen to this. And there is one quote in here.
Yeah, it's
they just
funny.
give it away.
Both sides are saying, yeah, the other side is crazy and the other side is a fascist.
Yeah.
So it's like he said, she said, nanny nanny boo boo out on the playground. Mm-hmm. It's really crazy.
All right, let's listen to some clips here.
Analysts, well, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start. But we just played a select few of those clips, and I actually think you do have to play them from time to time just to remind people this isn't normal. He comes out and he's talking about 29,000 Chinese soldiers and cell phones and soft, doughy judge. I don't know what you make of this, but he's not a normal person.
Right. Well, so the question is there selective amnesia when it comes to Trump? Are we truly the United States of amnesia, as Gore Vidal used to say? And to some extent, if you believe these polls, there is a certain amount of amnesia. And so I was actually glad that they covered some of that press conference the next day, the day after the guilty verdict. But it was interesting, and so many of the lies were so blatant. I mean, the idea that there's an army of Chinese soldiers coming from Mexico. I mean, I don't even know how that would work.
Right.
I don't even know how that would work. How is that even possible? How is it possible that anyone
could straight up gaslight you?
What? Let's jump ahead. I don't want to spend too much time here because it's just going to trigger everybody.
But it is useful because we need to show that each side accuses the other one of the same exact thing.
And that's interesting. But listen to this quote this is someone who is, I believe, is a psychiatrist or something like that. Well, she's, one of the experts for MSNBC. But listen to what she slips up and says. This gives away the whole game.
So this attack is not simply evidence, I think, of the cult, but it's of something even more deeper and more pernicious, and that's the attack on the entire concept of the rule of law. We've had this triumph. A former president had to sit concept of the rule of law. We've had this triumph. A former president had to sit in court of the rule of law. We've had this triumph.
The rule of law.
She says it's a triumph. We've had this triumph. This is not a triumph. If Joe Biden was to be arrested, it's not a triumph for America. It's a tragedy.
Exactly.
It's a bad thing.
It's bad.
This is bad. Whoever you vote for, whoever your team that you cheer for is, this is bad. So that gives it away. That gives away the mindset here, right? They don't love America. They hate certain people. All right. Not only that, we've seen over the past several days since, I guess it was last Friday, Thursday or Friday, they're celebrating. They're celebrating. There's just some more clips.
Lost in this kind of state of euphoria over the Trump conviction.
What was your reaction? I got so excited, I started leaking a little bit. I want the judge to give him 6 months. You're convicted of felonies. You got to do a little bit of time. This is what you would have to do.
I spent this morning speaking to someone from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He believes that they will recommend a 1-year term in prison. And that is because when you spend a year in prison in New York or under, you serve in Rikers Island. Okay?
And that makes them happy, doesn't it?
Congressman Bauman, he was literally dancing after the verdict. Look at this guy. Can you believe this?
They don't understand.
They have remember when they always try to pretend this is a somber moment for America? This is a somber proceeding, and we're respecting all the norms. No, I've never seen, this is malicious.
And here's Biden with the creepy smile that everyone's talking about.
When I saw that, Laura, I thought, I've seen that smile before, but where? But then I thought it reminded me of something more iconic. Not the Grinch, something else. The Passion of the Christ. That's where I've seen that smile before.
Oh, that weird evil baby.
Look at that.
So, Biden was asked, what was the question again that they asked Biden on that when he turned and gave that creepy smile?
Something about, the verdict and what had happened with Trump.
Yeah, and something about, I think it does, that was Peter Doocy. Peter Doocy asked him, are you worried that this might happen to you? And he just sort of gave that, that.
Right.
Of course not. Things just happen. But, that kind of pride.
Well, it's all there to just taunt you,
Speaking of taunting, Bobby D, if you're a Godfather fan, this is going to hurt.
Stupid hat off. Take that stupid hat off. You're a bunch of clowns.
That is actor Robert De Niro shouting down a Trump supporter outside the courthouse in New York City, where closing arguments are underway in the hush money trial. The case could go to the jury within hours.
Scare you. No, wait. Maybe I do mean to scare you. If Trump returns to the White House, you can kiss these freedoms goodbye that we all take for granted. And elections, forget about it. That's over. That's done. If he gets in, I can tell you right now, he will never leave.
It's funny because Robert De Niro is one of the greatest actors of all time, but for some reason, for these points, he has to look at notes. Mm-hmm. He has to look at notes to remember that that Trump is deranged and he's never going to leave. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, there's a disconnect with that for sure.
Very odd. Well, De Niro, is a bit, seems a bit deranged, or maybe he's
on the payroll.
Maybe he's on the payroll.
He's bought and paid for.
Are these guys on the payroll? There are some celebrities though that seem to be just like, well, this is a bit crazy. I don't know what's going on. Here's Rob Schneider, and if you guys remember Rob Schneider from Saturday Night Live, remember Steve Meister, the copy, right? The guy that stepped by the copier. Summer doesn't remember that one. Nobody.
No, I don't remember that one.
Oh, come on, let's do it. Let's just look right quick. Rob Schneider.
I just remember Church Chat.
Schneider, SNL, copy.
I'm thinking of Church Chat.
We have to. I'm probably going to get some kind of copyright here, but we'll get this. This is what it looks like when Sting was on there.
Tommy! Hey, Richard, I'm just making some copies. The Tomster!
Yes, I remember
Tom Man! Tom!
I remember.
How you doing, Richard? The Tomster, making copies! Mr. Tom! Tommy! Yeah, see ya.
Yeah, it's out of context. People are probably like, what in the world? Why is that even funny? Well, anyway, Rob Schneider, funny guy. Listen to what he has to say about all this.
I will say that we have a very good system. We have the legislature. We have the executive, judicial. It's a pretty good system. James Madison came up with it. I don't think any one man or either party, even if the Democrats win again, and I hope they don't, but if they do, we're strong enough to survive it. It's just, can we allow another 11 million people to come in and change the voting habits of this great country? And we do need immigration. I'm all for it. It just has to be legal. We do need people who want to come in and work. And thankfully, people do want to work. And we need that. However, I believe that the real threat to our system of government, and I don't think it's too good of a system.
I just have to say, right here's where you want to pay special attention. This is what made me very happy right here. I think you should be encouraged by it as well.
To turn into a dictatorship overnight. But if they want to expand the Supreme Court, that's a big problem. I think if they want to also expand, another thing for people out there, don't be so focused on this national election. Vote local, because thankfully we are not a democracy. We are a democratic republic. So we have our states that are that you can live your life. And that's why I moved the heck out of California to move to the slightly freer state of Arizona. And I'm glad I did. And I just want people to not be so paranoid about this. And if you want to get involved with your local school board. That's the problem with this new administration as far as if Biden.
So that's good advice. And that's exactly what we were trying to tell you here. You've got to get involved locally. I'll go ahead and say it here. We had, there was a comment on our under our last video, which I responded to. But, and it was the same. It was we hear this a lot because we're over here in this thing that they call the truth movement, and there's a lot of people here with us, a lot of people like us that will tell you that you shouldn't vote, you shouldn't get involved, you should stay away from it, because when you vote, you give your consent to all the evil, you give your consent to be ruled over. You're going to be ruled over. You're going to be a slave to one or the other. You can be a slave to the world, or you can be a slave to Christ. There's no middle ground, right? So this idea that I'm going to be an autonomous free man with no strings on me, that is a delusion. And I say that because I had it. I lived by that delusion for a while, trying to separate from everything. I'm going to get away from it and get outside the system. I'm not going to engage it. I'm going to get rid of my driver's license, social security number. I'm going to detach completely. That doesn't work. That causes way more trouble than it's worth. And as a Christian, that is not your duty. The Apostle Paul stated very plainly, you know, when he was taken in by the Roman soldiers, by the government at that time. You know, he's a Roman citizen. He was happy to say that. And that's what the Bible tells us, right? Be loyal to your nation. And I would say that idea that you should, the commenter said you should not vote. You should detach, stand on principles, and stay strong. But I have to disagree. That's not a principle. Right? That's running away from a principle and right back into slavery. And just be glad that the people who founded the nation and who have protected it and kept it over the last couple hundred years didn't have that mindset either. Or you wouldn't. Who do you think gave you the right to say, or why do you think you have the right to say, I don't consent? You think that would fly in the Soviet Union in 1980? Probably not. Well, here's another, as we bust out of here, here's another clip of De Niro.
Listen.
It shows the violence of Trump and reminds us that he'll use violence against anyone who stands in the way of his megalomania and greed. But it's a coward's violence. Do you think Trump ever threw a punch himself or took one?
What is this? These are not arguments, right? This is emotional ranting. It's childish, right? You think Trump ever threw a punch? What?
I know, it's very asinine.
Well, as Summer has reported to you through the Community Post and on Substack for the last several months, she's been putting this point to you, bringing it up over and over. The American justice system has been weaponized against all of us, right? And this is a term
Lawfare.
called lawfare.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Give folks just a brief, a couple minutes maybe on what this is.
Asymmetric warfare.
Yeah.
So the strategy is to get around the law, and I think a lot of people are familiar with this at this point. How could we not be? So just think of lawfare as warfare, and they basically use it to damage or delegitimize an opponent, or also deter an individual's usage of their legal rights. So this is, or you might want to say, like fifth generational warfare.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good points. That's a good presentation there. I hadn't seen that graphic yet. That's good. And that's what's happening. Trump has said, now can we just stop for a second and make sure that everybody understands that we're not saying that you should vote for Trump or you should vote for Biden. We're not telling you who to vote for, how to do any of this. We're just telling you that you need to be involved in your own hometown first. You need to know who's running things. And if you don't like it, the way I was responding to the commenter earlier, if you don't think things are right, if you think voting is the problem, all right, there's your platform. There's your mission. Change it. Get in there, because that's what our freedom is based on. It's based on how is it? We talked about this the other day. The government is only legitimate in that it gets its powers from the consent of the government. That's what makes the government legitimate.
The consent of the people.
The consent of the governed, the consent of the people. But it does, usually it stops there when you're talking constitutional law. But it doesn't stop there. Where do the people get their legitimacy from? What is their idea of authority? What principle, what standard are the people using to hold their government accountable? When we lose that, when we have 5 million different standards, you get what we have today. Nobody knows what's real. People say, I'm not going to vote because voting is the problem. We have ideas also, the other extreme, where the government should provide everything for me. I shouldn't have to get up and do anything every day. Well, what Summers just pointed out there, lawfare, the weaponization of the government. Here's Dennis Quaid, also echoing these sentiments.
The Rock said he's now considering voting for Trump, and this just happened last night on Piers Morgan's show. Take a listen.
What do you think of Trump?
I think I'm going to vote for him.
Really?
Yeah, in the next election. Yes, I am.
Are you ready for the blowback?
I was ready not to vote for Trump until I what I saw is more than politics. I see a weaponization of our justice system. You know, Trump is the most investigated person probably in the history of the world. And they haven't been able to really get him. People might call him an but he's my
You know, first of all, I think though actors of a certain age, and
Yeah, okay, so there's Quaid. That's interesting. So there are some celebrities who, you know, seem to, maybe they've got the message. And of course, there are people out there who are going to believe you shouldn't listen to any of that. It's all just theater. Yeah, this is political theater. Let me say this. It is political theater, and you need to play your role in it. We don't just sit back and watch it or ignore it. You have a role to play in it. And in fact, coming up here pretty soon, we've been working on this for a little bit now. We're gonna teach you how to go into maybe a city council meeting. More specifically, some of these meetings that agencies, non-governmental organizations, or groups that come into your community who want to convince you to, you know, zone this area over here, a certain way so we can build mixed use, smart growth on it. They tell you, teach you how to take your friends, a group of friends, family, or concerned citizens, and go into these meetings and derail, you know, to sort of de-Delphi.
De-Delphi, exactly.
De-Delphi, the Delphi technique. We're going to teach you how to de-Delphi these meetings. All right? And yeah, this book is called Behind the Green Mask by Rosa Quarry. And these principles, these tactics for how to go in and derail these people who mean to take your towns and cities, municipalities and communities away from you. They mean to get you off the land. They mean to push you into stack 'em and pack 'em, mixed use, smart growth facilities, right? They want to get you out of your car, get you into a walkable community. Now those things are not bad just of themselves, but these people ultimately want control of you. Full control, full surveillance. And they want to take your rights away from you. All right, so we know last week Donald Trump was convicted. Now, we think it's important, as we said here recently, you should read the documents. You should, if you're going to have an opinion on these things, you should read the documents and know what's going on. So let's actually do this right quick. Let's break down the charges against Trump, and then let's look at what actually went on in this trial and leading up to it, sort of behind the scenes, and try to give you a clear perspective on what's going on. Okay, so first of all, this case is in reference to charges that were introduced back during the 2016 campaign and election. All right, so the text of the indictment that you can see here, let's see, I'll make it. There you go. So there's the people of the state of New York. That's important. The people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump. The grand jury of the county of New York, by this indictment, accuses the defendant of the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. All right, and then it goes on 33 more times. There are 34 counts, and you can see where it's here. It will describe each separate count where they say he falsified business records in the first degree. All right, now let's talk about this just a little bit. What do we need to know about this? Okay, Trump was accused of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree, right? With intent to defraud and intent to commit another crime and aid and conceal the commission of the crime. So this is all predicated on some other crime that this action made possible. Not that this particular act is not a felony. And here's what's interesting. The fact of the matter is that there was nothing illegal about the payments that Donald Trump made, according to at least 2 former federal election law officials or commissioners. So it would seem from the facts of the case that Donald Trump was at the very least making a legal contract with one Stormy Daniels, right? Now, in exchange for $130,000, she would sign a legally binding, perfectly legal, non-disclosure agreement. Remember, this is back in 2016. And that non-disclosure agreement would prevent her, she would agree to not reveal any information about something that Trump preferred not to be made public. Now, we don't really know what that is. People speculate because of her profession, of course. But we don't know. We don't even know if she just made it up. Trump's reaction to it certainly seems that maybe it wasn't made up, but that's not the point here. So what's really happening here? At worst, Trump was trying to ensure that information that could potentially damage his reputation during his bid for the presidency in 2016, or information that could harm his family. He wanted to make sure that this remained private and out of the media. Was it immoral to do this? Probably. There's probably some immorality involved in this process to some degree, but we don't know exactly for sure what it is. So this is the perception of immorality, right? Now, was it illegal? No. Wasn't illegal. So something definitely happened between Trump and Daniels that he didn't want to become public, right? That seems to be clear. And that seems to be the worst of what happened. He broke no laws. Specifically, with what they've charged him up, he broke no laws, no federal campaign laws, by entering into a non-disclosure agreement with Ms. Daniels. Now let's break down why this case has been so significant in the media. Why is this considered a political attack? Well, it was, let's see, I've got this. I forgot to pull this article up, but it was revealed in 2017 that members of Congress had paid $17 million of taxpayer money. Let me see if I think I've got this article here. Yeah, here it is. Let me pull this up so you can see it. So this is a news story from 2017. There it is. That's too small. Let's do it that way. There we go. 2017, members of Congress had paid out $17 million in over 300 cases, 300 undisclosed, what they're calling hush money payments. So 300 times non-disclosure agreements were made up, were contracted between a member of Congress and some person. Most of these, as the article says, were to cover up sexual harassment claims, and it used taxpayer money to do it. All right, so this is what Trump has been accused of. Election officials confirmed that Donald Trump violated no campaign laws. The federal court in Washington, D.C. reviewed the facts and determined there was no case. That's 2 federal courts. And then the Southern District of New York reviewed the facts and determined there was no case. So lawyers for the Democrats, for the party, kept fishing until they found a district and a judge that would play ball. So the district attorney in this district, Alvin Bragg, happens to be one of Trump's worst self-proclaimed enemies. The judge in the case, Juan Merchan, is also marred in controversy, and there's a major conflict of interest surrounding the judge as well. By the way, when Trump paid Ms. Daniels this money, that was not from campaign funds. Those are from private funds. So as you can see here, this, and you'll hear people talking about this, there was no crime. I'll explain it a little more in just a second. But here's another, this is really interesting, right? Because the leader of the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries, sent payments totaling nearly $1.5 million to the private home of this judge's daughter. Now what is that about? Let's see, I'll give you some of the, let's see, so you can see these actual documents, hopefully. Lord, that shows you that it's Hakeem Jeffries. The committee is called Jeffries for Congress. So this is going to show you that this is just a list of the payments. Anyway, let's let you see what Jeffries looks like. There's Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, what happened? This congressman, and he's also House Minority Leader. That means he's sort of the leader of the Democratic Party right now. Sent these payments to Judge Merchan's daughter's home. Hakeem Jeffries is, he's, just to give you a little background, he's a politician, obviously, he's an attorney, and he's served as the House Minority Leader since back in 2023. Officially, he's called the Minority Leader and Leader of the House Democratic Caucus. And he's been a congressman for New York's 8th District since 2013. Now, at President Trump's rally, or before President Trump's rally in the Bronx last week, Jeffries tweeted out something like, you can see it here, telling Trump to go home. There it is. They said something like the Boston Red Sox are more popular than Trump in the Bronx. The Bronx is where the Yankees play. But Lauren Merchan, that's the daughter of the judge in Trump's case. She is listed in these documents as doing digital consulting and digital fundraising for Hakeem Jeffries, which means she likely tweets for him as well. So she might be the one that said that. But it turns out he's a client of Judge Merchan's daughter, Lauren Merchan. And these payments went to her home in Richmond, Virginia. So that's the question. This is Laura Loomer, her report says, why is Hakeem Jeffries sending nearly $1.5 million to this judge's daughter's personal residence in Richmond, Virginia, at a time when her father is overseeing Trump's trial in New York City? Right. The address on the documents show that that's where it was sent. So it's also interesting that the address where she lives, where these payments were sent, she lives there with her husband, Taylor Harper, who also works for the Biden administration. It seems to be a conflict of interest or, unethical. So, in a rather mysterious turn of events, after 2 federal campaign commissioners, 2 federal district courts refused to hear the case for lack of evidence, this particular court in Manhattan convened a grand jury, found some charges, and indicted Trump. That's not all. These experts say that the judge's instructions to the jury in the Trump trial also violated the U.S. Constitution. So just to keep it short, the judge's instructions to the jury were, all they had to do was find that Trump was guilty, that the falsification of the business records was done in furtherance of some other crime. What that crime was, there was never any clarification to the jury on what that ultimate crime was. So it's kind of like, here, if you believe that he was thinking about committing some other crime here in these records, the records weren't falsified in the first place, is how it comes out. There was nothing illegal about the arrangement, about the immoral, seedy, yes, but illegal, no. In other words, the jurors did not have to be concerned with whether the target crime, this mysterious target crime, they didn't have to be concerned with whether that crime ever occurred. They didn't have to prove whether Federal Election Commission violations had been committed. Now, I think John Rappaport, John Rappaport summed this up pretty well. I think I'll share with you what he had to say, because he's always very, how shall we say, summer, colorful, creative. He's a great writer.
He is.
Rappaport said, the judge gave the jury a menu of 3 charges to choose from. Find him guilty of any of these, and he's guilty. That's a mind-boggler. But that's not all. Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts. A charge is a count. The judge gave the jury 3 choices, and they voted guilty on 34. But wait, there's more. How does the jury deliberate and discuss 34 separate accounts? That would take at least 4 or 5 days. Took them a day and a half, right? How did they get through all that so fast? How did they go through and understand the facts and the circumstances and go around and vote and debate and argue on 34 different counts in a day and a half? They didn't. So was there an actual discussion? Was there any real deliberation on all 34 of these counts? Or maybe did one juror say, let's say it's the foreman. Maybe they said, look, we all know this guy's guilty. That's why we're here, to make that judgment. We all want to get back to our lives. So let's do this. There's no point in going through each one of these charges, each one of these claims. It's too complicated. Now look, we're all on the same side. The judge has already tipped us off about what he wants us to do. He's the boss. He's the leader. He knows how this is supposed to go, and we do too. So we're on the same side. Maybe we'll just go ahead and read the 34 counts, one by one. And we're all going to vote guilty on each one, and that'll be that. And we don't have to stay here for a week or two or a month. Or better, well, let's just take one vote. We know he's guilty, right? Let's take one vote. And if we do this, we're saving the country. We're saving the country from a crazy Nazi who wants to destroy it. Future generations will remember us. We're the people who stopped Donald Trump in his tracks. Now, if anybody here objects to what we're going to do to get this over with, let that person speak now or forever hold his or her or other pronouns in peace. Okay. Silence. Okay, then nobody's above the law. Guilty on all 34 counts. Now, maybe it didn't go down exactly that way, but generally it did go down that way because it had to. When you look at the, when we look at the, I don't have the text of the up here, but when you look at that, when you look at this, when you read the documents, where'd it go? Right here. When you read the documents, this is what you find out. That it would have taken a long time to get through all this. More time than they spent, for sure. The instructions were vague, and the instructions were very leading to the jury. 34 counts, 3 crimes, whatever that means. And I guess the jury felt like, why bother to find out what that means? And there's this too. Do you think if one juror had felt like disagreeing with all this, do you think that would have been easy to do? You're in New York. You're in Manhattan, Southern District. No, you're in the Manhattan. You're in the state court. Sorry, the Southern District turned it down. Well, anyone who maybe didn't think this was right, they might be a little worried about going against the grain in a case this big with this much on it, right? Because they've all seen the news. After the case had been shopped around to 3 different district courts, knowing full well all that was at stake, knowing how severe that these people can be when they don't get what they want. Do you think it would have been easy to go against this? Would it have been easy to be the lone voice that stands up and says, this is wrong, this is a travesty? At this level of the game, right, look what they've already done to Trump. And at this level of the game, people go missing for far less. But nobody's above the law, right? Justice must be served. Now, there's another point here. Lots of reasons for Trump to appeal. This thing's probably not going to stand. The judge did not sequester the jury. Look, and this has been the biggest case, I guess, since Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, since all that. This thing is everywhere, and it's in an election year, right? The judge needed to sequester the jury to keep them from watching the news every day, from reading social media and being influenced by it. He didn't do that. That means that these jurors were able to see and hear all the media, which means that the media had every opportunity to influence these jurors. And surely they knew that. And surely they did that. I believe Trump was right I believe the case was a complete sham. I don't think this was justice. I think this was a conviction on an arbitrary matter with no precedent whatsoever that was bought and paid for and delivered quicker than dominoes. Right? This is an example, I think, as Trump has said before, they're not really coming after him. They're coming after all of us. Donald Trump is the one standing in the way. I think there's some truth to that. And let's jump in now. Let's listen to a little bit of Donald Trump's the actual speech he gave, or the press conference he gave after the conviction. And remember how they called him mentally ill and a fascist, and this is interesting.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is a case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. And these are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people. When you look at our country, what's happening, where millions and millions of people are flowing in from all parts of the world, not just South America, from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, and they're coming in from jails and prisons, and they're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it.
Fascists, there you go.
Because they could right now, today, he could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape. And they're very much against me saying these things. They want to.
Not only that, Trump's been on a gag order. The judge put a gag order on Trump so that he couldn't talk about any of the details and specifics of the case. He couldn't mention names. He couldn't mention the judge's name. Come on, man. That's. Let's jump in here now. At the end of his press conference is where he makes the claim about Chinese soldiers, right? And of course, the left has been saying now for ever since that's crazy. You heard right at the top of the show, right? I'm not even sure how that would work. Chinese soldiers coming into the country. This man's crazy. He's unhinged. He's mentally ill. Let's listen to the claim and then let's test it.
Raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car.
You got the mud.
Make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have. We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted.
Sorry, I thought I clicked on the 28-minute mark. See, that's back at the beginning. Here you go. Here come the Chinese soldiers. He's going to talk about immigration a little bit.
Right now, DonaldJTrump.com, because it really makes a difference. They have a lot of money on the other side. I don't know where they get it. Nobody knows where they get it. But for some reason, they get money.
Oh, we know where they get it. They send it to Ukraine, and it comes right back and funnels, launders right back into their accounts. Don't we think so?
Mm-hmm.
Don't we think that's
Yes.
maybe what's happening?
Yeah.
That is a claim, and I don't have any evidence to support it. I have circumstantial, but anyway. I think we have a good idea of where their money comes from. It comes from us.
But they're not on the side of our country. In many ways, I think they hate our country. Who on earth can want open borders where people are allowed to pour in from countries unknown, from places unknown, from languages that we haven't even heard of? We have people sitting in schools with languages where very few people have ever even heard of these languages.
That was funny to me. I didn't know what in the world he was talking about there. There's people coming in with never before heard languages. Is this some of that UFO? I mean, are these aliens? Like literal aliens?
Languages. It's not like Spanish or French or Russian. Languages unknown. We have people coming from corners of the globe, and many of them are not good people. Many terrorists, record levels of terrorism, record levels of terrorists have come into our country. Record. They've never seen anything like it. You know, there was a report that in 2019, I don't believe this, by the way, the media gave it, and it was good for me, believe it or not, They said in 2019 there were no terrorists recorded that came into our country. I don't believe that. I don't think that's possible. But 2019 was a Trump year. I don't believe that that could be possible. But they said no terrorists came into our country. So let's say it was close. Let's say it was close. But now record levels of terrorists, record levels, the highest level we've ever seen of terrorists are pouring into our country. You have China with just in the last few months, 29,000 people came in, and I looked at them on a line, and they look like perfect soldiers. They're almost all male, from 19 to 25. It looks like a recruiting exercise. They have beautiful tents. They have propane stoves. They have cell phones, the best you can buy. I said, what's going on? It looks like they're building an army right in our country.
Well, of course, that seems... Now, let's go back here where we just heard a moment ago. Let's listen to this right here.
Collective amnesia when it comes to Trump. Is that, are we truly the United States of amnesia, as Gore Vidal used to say? And to some extent, if you believe these polls, there is a certain amount of amnesia. And so I was actually glad that they covered some of that press conference the next day, the day after the guilty verdict. But it was interesting, and so many of the lies were so blatant. I mean, the idea that there's an army of Chinese soldiers coming from Mexico. I mean, I don't even know how that would work.
Right.
Okay, well, let's, I don't know her name. I'd like to address her, but let's help her out. Let's help her understand how that might work. Mockery they're on the case. There is an illegal employment scheme where military-age Chinese illegals driving delivery, DoorDash, whatever else is there, Uber Eats, Grubhub, driving delivery in the heart of America, right? They can't get a driver's license. They can't work legally here. They're illegals, but they're doing it, right? And they're interacting with families in their homes in suburbia, quietly surveilling our way of life, gathering info and intel, and without a doubt, sharing it with the folks back home in China. So is Trump crazy? Is this a crazy idea?
Rosemead, California. Muckraker spoke with Chinese illegal aliens who are part of a black market employment scheme. Illegal aliens with no background checks are driving for DoorDash and Uber by renting accounts from other drivers, many of whom are illegal aliens themselves. Jose Ibarra, the illegal alien who murdered Laken Riley, allegedly drove for Uber Eats and DoorDash, most likely through a similar scheme. The illegals we spoke to also said that there are Chinese spies living in America, and said that they fear the CCP may retaliate against their families. This is what the fraudulent drivers told us.
So, what part of China are you from?
你是中国哪里来的？
中国辽宁。
辽宁 province in China.
How did he get to the United States?
你是怎么来的美国？
我是应该说偷渡还是走线
？By smuggling.
The Darien Gap?
你走过雨林吗？
走过 ，yeah.
Yeah, by Darien Gap.
How do you drive an Uber that's not your account? Can you explain the way that works? How do you do that?
就是这个Uber号不是你的。
不是，
你是怎么用？
我就实话实说就行，是吧？
对，你就怎么用这个Uber号跑呢？因为它不是你的，你是怎么跑
的？这不揭露行业秘密吗？
对。
那这么揭，这不坏事吗？这我还有什么饭吃？
没事儿。
没事吗？
没事儿。
那个用租赁别人的号吗？可以这么说吧？
对。
租赁别人
的。Another one's Uber account.
And so, does Uber check your face?
Uber 账号需要刷你的脸吗？
我的是吧？不需要。
No, Uber accounts doesn't need to scan his face.
But they need to scan the account owner's face.
Yeah, the Uber account need to scan the owner's face, but not his.
And so, is it random when Uber scans the face, or do you know when it's going to happen?
你知道刷脸的具体时间吗？是随机的还是？
不知道，随机的。
It's random.
It's a random thing.
So what happens if he's driving and Uber says, "Let me scan your face right now"? What does he do? What do you do?
如果你正开的时候要刷脸的话，你会怎么办？
那我就会找号主重新刷呀。
He will stop driving and then find the owner to scan the face.
Okay. What percentage of the money do you keep?
你自己留多少钱？就百分比。
85%。
85%.
85%. And then do you pay taxes on the money? Do you pay taxes to the government?
你给政府交税吗？
那个号主会交税的吧？
So the owner will pay the tax because the owner keeps that 15%.
So, do you know other Chinese people who are also driving for Uber with somebody else's account?
你还知道有人就是像你这样的开其他人的 Uber 账号？
我知道有一个朋友。
He knows.
He knows other people?
One man, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any family in the United States that came with you from China?
你有没有跟你一起来美国的家人？
没有。
在美国？
没有。
No.
No. Do you have any family back home in China?
你在国内有家人吗？
有。
Yes, he has.
Yeah. Are you afraid of the CCP in America, or are you afraid to talk bad about the CCP?
你在美国说共产党的坏话，你会害怕吗？
我不会说吧，我不会说他坏话的吧。
He said he won't say any bad words against the CCP.
And how long have you been driving for DoorDash?
你用DoorDash跑多久了
？DoorDash 跑了1个多月，1个半月。
1个半月。1.5 months.
1.5 months. Yeah. How did he get the DoorDash job if he doesn't have any documents?
你没有任何文件了，没有任何资质，你是怎么拿到这个账号的？
就是我们一起的中国人，然后借用他的。
He borrowed his account from other Chinese.
Okay. And so, actually, do you have a license?
You mean driving license?
Driver's license.
你有驾照吗？
中国驾照。
He only has China's driving license.
China's driving license. Okay. Okay. Does DoorDash check who's driving or no?
DoorDash 这个账号，他核查你的护照没有？
这是别人的账号，做的别人的账号，我的没查。
No, because DoorDash account has already checked the owner's driving license, but not his.
And so, how much money do you make, maybe in 1 week?
你一周大概能赚多少钱？
一周大概1300到1400。
CCP influence that we have shown in this video, it's worth considering the possibility that Chinese drivers could be coerced to engage in espionage activities, including spying on people or neighborhoods during deliveries, or even bugging homes. It's also reasonable to suppose that a criminal alien taking advantage of this system could use the opportunity to murder someone in cold blood, as happened to Lake and Riley. Companies like Uber and DoorDash have positioned themselves as paragons of wokeness, openly supporting the LGBTQ agenda, critical race theory initiatives, and Marxist organizations like Black Lives Matter. Uber has even gone so far as to ban conservatives such as Laura Loomer from their platform. Furthermore, Uber is a corporate partner of HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, an NGO that has helped hundreds of thousands of aliens invade the United States. These platforms are facilitating a potential national security threat, and it does not appear much is being done to stop it.
Did you see that last piece right there? Right here, corporate partnerships with DoorDash. Listen to this.
From their platform. Furthermore, Uber is a corporate partner of HIAS.
HIAS. That is called Jewish Family Services. And that's where we're headed now. This is a fascinating part of this story. Now, we've covered for you here for a while.
Well, I can also tell you that as somebody who lived as an expat in Asia, you needed to have a valid driver's license in their country in order to drive.
Yeah, they're just doing this, right? They're just doing it hoping they don't get pulled over. And in a lot of places, if they do, the police are not going to do anything. Not going to do anything.
Yeah, this is really messed up.
So, let's see here. Remember that. HIAS. HIAS. I'm going to get to that in just a minute.
That's a smoking gun.
Jewish Family Services is what it's called. Here's the question. Is the Biden administration, along with Benjamin Netanyahu's Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu he's in charge right now, are they working together to infiltrate the United States of America, setting up conditions for war to break out in America. Not civil war, but war where citizens start fighting back against this influx of illegals coming into their area, taking over their, absorbing their resources, taking over their community centers, in some cases their homes. War is brewing in America, but it's not the way Hollywood and the media and most of the media is predicting it. There have been fears and even a feature film made about the growing possibility of a civil war in the United States, right, Sam? We saw that. Did you want to make a comment about Civil War movie?
Well, I mean, yeah, everybody said about how it doesn't pick a side, but actually it really does pick a side. It's very leftist. Yeah. It's oozing with leftism or whatnot, and very, as well, extremely psychopathic. Because the main character, the young girl that follows Kirsten Dunst, in the end, she just steps over her dead body and continues snapping photos as if that's heroic. Yeah. I mean, it's there's no emotion. It's very vapid and also very strangely sinister as far as, you know, nobody knows why they're shooting. And then there's the stereotyping of, you know, the guy that's patriotic, that's a total racist. I mean, it's just reinforcing everything.
The president is an analog of Donald Trump for sure. You can see that in the movie. We saw that.
Yeah.
Well, war is definitely brewing. Okay, but it's not like that. This is not how it's brewing. In many major American cities right now, residents are stressed out, overextended, and angry about the hardships brought to bear on their lives since Joe Biden occupied the White House in 2020. 4 straight years of buses flooding illegal aliens into the city of Chicago, for example. Chicago, let's start talking about Chicago. This has pushed the people who live there to the point of retaliation. Some say they're ready to fight to take back their communities. Here's some notes I wrote on, I was listening to J.J. Carell, who is the one who's been covering this. He's making a documentary right now called Treason about this. The potential for a real battle to break out grows daily. Inner city black communities are being driven out by a coordinated operation of the federal government in partnership with this group we just mentioned, HIAS, H-I-A-S. These illegals are being shipped to Chicago and given accommodations, food, clothing, electronics, and they're even buying cars. Now let's look at this. This is also happening in New York. The situation's untenable, and the suffering of these and many millions of other Americans has been designed and executed by elements of the Biden regime, with a supporting role being played by elements of the Israeli government. Biden's Department of Homeland Security, his Secretary of DHS, Alejandro Mayorkas, has facilitated the inundation of millions of unvetted illegal aliens into America through the southwestern border with Mexico. The most humiliating factor of this forced flood of foreign factions is that it's being funded by you and me, by American taxpayers. For clarity, let's make sure everybody understands what we're saying here. The American people have been hoodwinked into funding the invasion and destabilization of their own country. Many residents of these major cities, these sanctuary cities, are supporting their own removal from their homes and communities. According to a House of Representatives report revealed last November, costs directly associated with this orchestrated infiltration could be as high as $451 billion. That's getting close to $500 billion. That's your money. That's enough to make people mad. But it goes deeper than that. In 2024, in America, the possibility for an armed conflict in these overstressed sanctuary cities is real. All right, so here's this is a story again from the Post where this $451 billion. Now that report came out last November, so that's there for you to find. It's compiled from federal and state records, media reports, and other public information. This 50-page document outlines the taxpayer costs incurred. Things like medical care, housing, education, welfare benefits for tens of millions of illegals. And that's to say nothing of the cost of additional costs to law enforcement.
Well, and also remember we were talking about this with the medical industrial complex being bigger than the military industrial complex, because we're now living in a world where, since we're all, connected on the internet, they can control our every move, essentially, like making you relevant, canceling you, putting you in the digital gulag. And so the new warfare is lawfare, but it's also, just through the virtual reality that we're living in, the simulation that we're living in, they don't have to get a gun. They don't have to get a tank anymore. They can destroy people by just hitting a button. So that's why you see they want full access to your veins. And also they have a big program as well that we're going to talk about, how they want to be involved in mental health, so they want to be in control of determining whether your mental health is sound or not. And, if it's not, then you need to come in, and then we have the access, we have the right then to give you this medication, that medication, or the other. Why? Because for the greater good.
Yeah, it's to keep people in the future safe. Also, yeah, that's a good point. We're going to get on down to that too, because the police have been militarized. The federal agencies like Health and Human Services have been militarized. The IRS has been militarized. Okay? Chicago has spent $3 billion of Chicago taxpayer dollars on funding and sustaining illegal aliens. Now, most of these in Chicago, for some reason, are from Venezuela. Venezuela happens to be, as Donald Trump said, it is a fact, they emptied out their prisons and put them on the path to the border. Right? And this is happening in Chicago's, the black community specifically. In Chicago, residents are mad. They're more than mad. Migrants are pushing them out, absorbing their resources. And it's these Venezuelan illegals. They're driving new cars. Also, landlords are paying black residents $1,000 to vacate their apartments and homes because illegals have a $9,000 rent stipend attached to them from the federal government, available for the taking. You see this article here. New York signs $77 million contract with hotels to house illegal immigrants. How in the world is this happening? Are Barack Obama, Joe Biden, is Barack Obama somehow involved? We did see the movie, what's it called? The End of the World. What's that movie called? The Obama Netflix movie?
Leave the World Behind.
Leave the World Behind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that movie was, I thought that movie was more interesting than Civil War.
Yeah, it was. It seemed to give a lot more away than that. And you couldn't tell in Leave the World Behind. There was a war going on in the city in the distance, but you didn't know who was fighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the idea was everybody was an enemy.
Yeah.
Or maybe that it was a campaign of confusion.
Biden, Obama, Rahm Emanuel. These are Obama and Rahm Emanuel. These are some of the Chicago elites, right? Benjamin Netanyahu. Are these people orchestrating chaos? Are they cultivating conditions for severe conflict in the U.S.? We've seen this happen in Europe, right? Where the flood of illegals, of what they call migrants. If they're moving from one place to the other to work, they're called, that's a migrant.
They're agents of development, according to the United Nations.
Yeah, that's what the United Nations calls them, agents of development. So we've seen, though, billionaires like George Soros fund color revolutions in Ukraine a couple different times. A color revolution is where you foment discord down among the people. You get them turned against one another or against the government, and you prop up heroes, right? George Floyd, Sergei, I can't remember Sergei's last name, but in the Ukraine, he was just like George Floyd. And they build these revolutions that
his mural on all the walls.
Yeah, that was made into an idol. And so these are color revolutions are meant to shift the nation, to bring in a new order, to bring in new leadership, to influence things that way. So how's it being done? Well, this group, HIAS, H-I-A-S, here's their website. Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, also known as Jewish Family Services. HIAS receives hundreds of millions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money through the Office of Refugees Resettlement. This one right here. The Office of Refugee Resettlement is a sub-agency of the Department of Health and Human Services.
Mind you, if I wanted to go, for example, to Bali and just show up and live there, that's not going to happen.
No, not now.
You would be deported.
That's right. And they're sending people away right now, aren't they? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, record number this past year.
Interesting.
Mainly from the U.S., U.K., and where was it? Russia.
Sending them home?
Deporting them.
Party's over.
Well, yeah. Well, they were also, the way that they were talked about too was they didn't have enough money to stay there. And so they got deported.
Yeah, they're not contributing to the society. Imagine that. That sounds pretty reasonable, doesn't it? So the Office of, what was it called again? The Office of Refugee Resettlement was created by Joe Biden as part of the Department of Health and Human Services. So right here is the Office of Refugee Resettlement's website. At the bottom of the page is a list of agencies. It's actually over here. Or it's at the bottom of HIAS. Down here it is. At the bottom of the page is a list of agencies that receive matching grants from taxpayer funds. Note that at the bottom of, the home page of ORR, you find out down here, I know the text is so small, but right there you see HIAS. So there you see that this Jewish Family Services is listed as one of those agencies that receives funding from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. That's your tax money. Now, there are also many NGOs involved. J.J. Carrell is the man who's been covering this. You can find him on Twitter, J.J. Carrell, Carrell. Let's see. There's J.J. Carrell. He's been covering this. He's in Chicago. He's been to the border, and now he's in Chicago interviewing these. This is treason.com is how you can check out his website where you can help him make this documentary. All of the NGOs that we've reported to, that you've seen others report, that are helping migrants come from Colombia up through Panama, the Darien Gap, through Central America, and on up into Mexico, and where the coyotes bring them to the border. They're all subordinate to this group, Jewish Family Services, HIAS. HIAS distributes all of the U.S. payer tax monies to these other NGOs. So what we have here is a clandestine, treasonous conspiracy between the Biden White House and an Israeli non-governmental organization to transport tens of millions of criminal illegal aliens, most of them single, unattached, military-aged men, into the United States at taxpayer expense. What do you think about that? Where do your dollars go, and what do they fund, actually? Well, we've shown you here. You've seen, you know by now. They're literally bases that are set up from Colombia all the way up through Central America. It's like a military operation. Bases that funnel illegals from Colombia to Panama, right through the Darien Gap. and they come to the U.S. border where they literally waltz right into the USA to a hearty welcome wagon of money, cell phones, clothing, housing, transportation, and apparently a get out of jail free card. Look at this. Right here's some of the evidence on the Darien Gap, where Jewish Family Services. There you go. In the Darien Gap, refugees receive help all along the way, and they're happy to tell you. They're happy to tell you that they're funding that. Where do they get the money? The Office of Refugee Resettlement. Where do they get their money? From you. Now, many of these migrants, many of them certainly are fleeing deplorable conditions, and they've seen an opportunity to make a better life. Some are really seeking asylum and want to build a better life. But for the groups we'll be discussing now, that is certainly not the case. Some of these men are funded and aided all along the journey, as you see here, by this operation, by the U.S. government, actually. So far, since 2020, Jewish Family Services alone has smuggled more than 1 million illegals, just them alone has more than 1 million illegals into the United States and set them up with everything they need to live comfortably and to blend into American life. What do they do once they get here? Well, looks like they're doing all kinds of things that are really not cool. How about that? They're buying cars. They have enough money. They're being given enough money to buy cars, to drive around without a license or insurance, breaking local laws and ordinances.
Hey, but that's not carbon neutral. Why is that being allowed?
Yeah, why don't they just give them an electric car? Because that would be punishment.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's
what's really
the hypocrisy?
It is. It's a contradiction. It's hypocritical. What's really shocking here, though, is that they're replacing minorities in the inner city. Specifically, we're talking about black folks that live in Chicago. Specifically, right now, we're talking about Chicago, but they just seem to be they're being replaced. I think
it's like they're rooting them out. And then you and I remember we were having this conversation about the people that are going up through the Darien Gap and all that. It's like they're literally getting others to sort of do the dirty work and like really refine these trails that are going to be leading up here to the States. And I mean, in my view, it just seems like they're letting people go and do the brunt work, like the hard work. And then they're going to come in behind it and they're going to pave the roads. And, you know, it's probably going to be a road system that military can come up through. And yeah, they're pushing people in Chicago out. Right.
And one of the statistics was that there were about 700,000 black residents in Chicago proper, in the city of Chicago. And that about 700,000 migrants have been brought into the area. So you can see that's like a one-for-one replacement. So here's an article, Behind the Wheel Without a License, Migrants Buying Cars Make a Life. Right. Here's another article.
Are we going to play a couple clips from that Twitter?
We're going to get to that, yeah.
All right.
And so here the New York City politicians are demanding a probe of pricey unregistered cars. So this isn't happening in New York City as well. These cars are being towed from the shelter, right? They say it's an abuse of taxpayer dollars, I would say. And so here's, let's see, J.J. Carell with Chicago residents. Let's see here. I've got some clips. So J.J. Carell says in no uncertain terms that an open war will soon break out in Chicago as the citizens of the city, and these are mostly black citizens, are being deliberately and systematically driven from their homes and livelihoods by the federal government in collusion with Chicago's mayor and city officials in order to give billions of dollars to criminal aliens who are mostly from Venezuela, setting them up in first-class accommodations, providing the best food and clothing, transportation, heat in the winter, including allowing illegals to purchase and drive these nice automobiles without having a driver's license. No registration, no license plate, no legal documentation for the car, or any right to drive it at all. And so the citizens of inner city Chicago, they're hot. They've had enough. And so what Carell is saying is that all it will take is the killing of a young black man, or maybe the raping of a young black girl by an illegal alien, and war against these alien invaders could explode in Chicago. And he goes on here to say that police officers know this, and they've said when it happens, there won't be anything they can do to stop it. And when it starts in Chicago, it will spread throughout the nation, throughout inner cities in America's largest municipalities. Let me play this clip. So Clayton Morris interviewed J.J. Carell, and this is one of the best. This is the interview that's available, that's easiest to get to. So listen to this.
Chicago's a war zone, and it is a forgotten. Trump called it the forgotten America, forgotten Americans. So the reason why I went to Chicago is I believe it's a ground zero of the invasion. This is the manifestation of treason. It's going to work from the coastlines in through the inner cities of major metropolitan areas. That gentleman that you showed, Mark Clayton, is an activist. Mark Carter, is an activist in Chicago. He took me down to the South Side. I had to be escorted down there because of the gang violence and all the issues. But their local government has poured over $3 billion into their community for illegal aliens, not their community, but for illegal aliens. And they are being systematically pushed out of their communities like Inglewood. It is something I have never witnessed before. I feel like I'm traveled, I'm smart, I've been places. I'm telling you, when you go down to the South Side, it is desolate, it is desperate, hopeless, violent. I would say 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 houses are dilapidated and shuttered. The other 4 need to be shuttered. Businesses are closed and shuttered. There's no industry. They are bringing illegal aliens, majority from Venezuela, and they are moving them out of their communities. Let me give you an example. The city of Chicago paid black residents that were living in these dilapidated shacks, if you will, $1,000 to move out. Well, why would the landlords in Chicago want them to move out? $1,000. Because each illegal alien has $9,000 attached to them for rent assistance.
So there you go. There's a repetition of what we just told you. I was reading J.J. Carell's work there. Let me tell you who he is. J.J. Carell is a 24-year veteran of Customs and Border Protection. He's right now, as he said, he's researching and filming this documentary called Treason about this invasion operation. So you can go to thisistreason.com to help out with that. Let me jump forward here just a bit.
It was the epicenter. And you're right. What scares the power structures more than anything, Clayton, is a big white man standing next to a big black man, both alpha males, one in law enforcement, one in the prison system, and realizing we have enormous amounts in common. We agree on the majority of everything. And the things that we don't agree on, we can civilly talk and come.
So he's making a good point here. I think this is interesting because this, we have to, as it says in the first chapter of James, when we experience trials from without, not temptations from within necessarily here, but trials from without, what it can do if we have a faithful response to it, we can grow spiritually. Now, if you apply that to this situation, like 2020 with the plan scam epidemic, things were shaken up. The church benefited from that shakeup. A lot of bad churches shut down. A lot of good churches prospered and built up. So that's an interesting point. Now let's listen here as he tells us about this being a big operation.
I want to say that as I travel and I see it, I went from leaving the United States Border Patrol 3 years ago when the NGOs didn't really know what they were doing. The NGOs on the South Side bringing the caravans up didn't know. The government just created this chaos because they wanted to destroy America. And it was all chaotic and clunky. No longer, Clayton. I'm watching an industrial strength, the industrial size operation that is streamlined and efficient.
There you go. Streamlined and efficient. We know that. It's just, it's encouraging to hear it corroborated. Let's go here. Let's Let's listen to this guy. This seemed to be an important one he had.
And it's going to be a bloody war, especially in this city.
Yes.
That quietly has set up these beachheads as if they bring these people in here to go to war with us. Trump is child's play compared to Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel. Cities for Action.
So they dovetail into New America. They're working hand in glove.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Yes. So all the mayors in these liberal cities are working alongside of.
All right, Sam, did you hear that right there?
Mm-hmm.
You know what this is? That is regionalism.
Yeah.
That's regionalism, folks. Check out our Substack. Our most recent article is regionalism. What he's talking about here, maybe JJ doesn't have the language for it yet. Maybe people don't quite understand, but this is how it works. Doesn't matter if the pandemic treaty is ever ratified, IHR and all that. These things are done one way or another. And one way that they are done is through, you heard him say it there, these mayors from different areas, maybe mayors from a region in Illinois or maybe a few states come together and they work on policies and agendas together that come from somewhere. It wasn't their idea. It comes from the federal government. And where do those policies and ideas come from? Well, it doesn't really matter because the policies of the WHO and the policies of the UN are the policies of the federal government. Okay, so this is what we mean by regionalism. This is how these things are done. This is why it's so difficult for citizens to fight back, because you can't vote out the mayor of another city, but your mayor and that mayor are on some kind of conference or confederation, some super governance, some regional super government that's making these choices. This is why it looks like a lot of these mayors are helpless to stop what's happening, or they're playing the role, one or the other.
Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel, Joe Biden to eliminate Americans.
What is New America? You think that's the goal? Is to, because when you look at their charter and you look at the
name says it all.
New Americans.
The name says it all. I mean, what more do we need to hear? To call for uprising against this.
Yes.
We cannot afford. You haven't seen crime.
No.
You haven't seen murder. Most of what you see happening in Chicago's politicians want to paint it as gang problems. This is not a gang problem. There are no gangs in Chicago any longer. This is where they've starved the people into savagery. They've starved the people into having to go to the streets to find any way to survive. So from robbing people to stealing, this is what the poor people resort to because of the Democrat Party.
Yes, it is all Democrat
Trump
policies.
is child's play compared to Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Rahm Emanuel, the Black Caucus in this city. Mm-hmm. They are the racists.
Yes.
And as long as Trump doesn't have people like us who can give the real story, then they'll continue to use the media to paint him in a way that culturally will make black Americans run away from him. But really, in actuality, the person they should be fighting is Joe Biden.
Yes.
Did you hear what he said at the top? It will be listen to this.
And it's going to be a bloody war, especially in this city.
Yes.
Bloody war, especially in this city. And that's because they're armed. They are armed. Now let me jump over here and listen to this piece, this last quote from J.J. Carew.
To our nation. And it's unfair. You and I can have a discussion, Clayton, about how much money we give, how do we fix the homeless problem. But the one discussion we can't have any disagreement on, do you take care of American citizens first? Or do you make them stay and sleep in the freezing cold while I take care of foreign nationals that broke our nation's laws? And I give them everything they need. When I was coming out of those homeless shelters, the illegal alien migrant hotels, you know what I saw? I saw men wearing very nice clothes, extremely clean, watches, jewelry. Another thing I saw, Clayton, they were jumping in and out of vehicles that they bought that had no license plates, no anything. And I'm told by Chicago PD officers, we're not allowed to stop them. We know who they are. They get to drive licenseless, plateless, anything. Just, it's anarchy. It's anarchy. And I will tell you this, I talked to several lieutenants within the Chicago PD, and they told me the plan was to have no plan, meaning just chaos. These are soldiers, frontline law enforcement guys telling me this is a disaster. And they tell me also the DNC comes in August. They said, prepare. It's going to be beyond insane. Crime, rampant, BLM, anarchists, illegal aliens, gang members says, we're not prepared. That's quote, we are not prepared. That's why you're seeing the DNC thinking about canceling their convention.
And you said they're not prepared. The Chicago PD says we're not prepared?
Chicago, this is a quote, Chicago PD lieutenant told me, we are not prepared and our federal partners are extremely concerned because we do not have a handle on anything.
I hope people are paying attention.
I do too, because I want to push back on that right now. I'm not going to disagree with them about what's happening. I'm going to push back on the fact that the police is not prepared. New York Post, well, that the police or the federal government is not prepared. That's not true. There's a part to this story that they're missing. Here's a story from the New York Post from May of last year. IRS has spent $10 million. The IRS has spent $10 million on weapons, ammo, and combat gear since 2020. This is from Open the Books. We covered this here for you. What was that show? 251 maybe or something like that? It was something like
243?
Show 243 where we went into great detail on this. We'll link it in the description.
Yeah, it's
maybe.
243, abuse of power, weaponizing government through healthcare against you.
There's an article we have on Substack as well. This Summer has an article there called, I forget, it's about abuses of power, right? It's the title.
Yeah, emergency powers.
About emergency powers.
We can link that too.
Now, let me tell you let's finish up with this. A big problem, a major problem that's been brewing, building up in the United States for many years now, and now we're seeing maybe why this was done. The 1033 program is a federal initiative allowing the transfer of military equipment to local law enforcement agencies. Departments receive surplus equipment like blankets, office furniture, refrigerators, and power tools, right? That's no big deal. That's good. They're helping out. Wrong. Wrong. They also receive weaponry, personal body armor, armored vehicles, state-of-the-art surveillance and attack technologies. Policing agencies claim the equipment helps save lives during natural disasters, helps save lives during live shooters and hostage situations. It helps save money, even though they're never really able to quantify these benefits. That's what they say. Overall, these agencies that participate in this authoritarian-looking program seem to downplay the damage done to public perception about militarized police. Public officials, especially Congress, who approved the 1033 program, they pay very little attention to oversight of the militarization of police departments in America, or federal agencies for that matter. A new report by researchers at the Policing Project found that policing agencies acquire militarized equipment from sources beyond the 1033 program, and in fact, they prefer to get it somewhere else. Because one way or another, they're going to get the equipment and weapons they want. And if they get it outside of the 1033 program, there's less oversight. So how do they get it? It's a complex web of private foundations and other federal programs, like coming from the Department of Homeland Security's Urban Areas Strategy Initiative. That's UASI if you want to research that. Department of Homeland Security, Urban Areas Strategy Initiative. Is it all coming together? Are you seeing the puzzle pieces? Chicago, urban area. Department of Homeland Security's Urban Areas Strategy Initiative, where they're sending in militarized equipment. They have what they need to do battle with there. I don't believe for a second that they're not prepared. That might be the narrative, but that's not the truth. There's also the Defense Department's 1122 program. It's a grant program. There's the Burn, B-Y-R-N-E, Burn Justice Assistance grants provide even better equipment and weaponry. That is not second generation or military hand-me-downs, but shiny new state-of-the-art weaponry and surveillance technology. The funding mechanisms behind the militarization of police in America are shadowy and well protected. They're well protected by law enforcement, and they're protected by their close relationship to the lawmakers, the legislators, and the Justice Department, and the Department of Homeland Security. All of that information was from something called the Policing Project. You can look that up too if you like. This is what's referred to as creeping normality, or death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's the new normal, they call it now. A police officer's creed is to protect and serve. A soldier's mission is to engage his enemy in close combat and kill him. Now, if cops are being trained like soldiers, if they're being dressed up like soldiers, and they're being given the equipment and weapons of soldiers, should we be surprised when they act like soldiers? This is an armored personnel carrier with gun turrets from Nashville. Now, as we've said here before, time and time again, do not outsource your duty as a man and as an American. Those of you who want to send us comments in, we're crazy for voting, we're thinking about this wrong. Those of you who want to criticize us saying you should just be sharing the gospel. Yeah, we should be sharing the gospel. That's not all we're supposed to be doing. The Great Commission has elements to it. Part of that is to train people to be obedient, train people in obedience to Christ. We're also here to tear down bad arguments that are made against Christ's kingdom. And for those who might say that Christ's kingdom is not of this world, we're building this kingdom. We are the representatives of that kingdom in this world. We're not to sit back and watch things burn. The gospel is the leading edge of our mission. That is true, and that is a fact. But being salt and light in the world means that we carry the truth, that we run into the fire, not away from it. When the building's on fire, we go in. We're on a rescue mission here. Protecting our freedom is the duty of every American man, and it's no one else's. Soldiers of our military, when they're deployed for righteous reasons, should be honored and treated with the utmost respect. They defend our nation's sovereignty from threats beyond our borders. But inside our borders, in our states, counties, local cities, towns, villages, communities, the protection of our God-given rights and freedoms is the duty of every man. The Constitution secures those rights and freedoms, but it also requires that we protect and defend them. We don't outsource it to governments. The Constitution doesn't suggest or strongly encourage that we protect and defend our liberty. It is required of us. That's how we keep it. Now, openthebooks.com, this is the show that Summer mentioned earlier. This is where we go into great detail about this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this since we've already done it. For example, there are 186,000 Marines. There are 200,000 plus federal employees and federal contractors with firearm authority. 103 executive agencies outside of the Department of Defense spent $2.7 billion on guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment. And that was between 2006 and 2019. Nearly $1 billion was spent between 2015 and 2019 alone. So they're ramping up. Non-military federal spending on guns and gear averaged $192 million per year since 2006. And in the last 2 years, this is a year old now, spending averaged $173 million, about 10% below the long-term average. So Open the Books estimates that there are now more federal officers with firearm authority, 200,000 plus, than U.S. Marines. 76 administrative agencies spent $110 million on guns and ammunition and military-style equipment. Let me give you the top 10. The militarization of United States executive agencies. So as you can see, over the past couple decades, the size, scope, and power of the federal government has dramatically grown. There are 458 Special Office of Inspector General agents with Health and Human Services who are armed with sophisticated weaponry, and who are trained by military special forces contractors right here in America. Who is the greatest threat to America? Is it the WHO, really? Is it really the WHO? These security forces pale in comparison to the Department of Homeland Security. DHS owns 250,000 guns, not including Transportation Security Administration, which they do not disclose those numbers. So why does the IRS need 4,500 guns and 5 million rounds of ammunition? Why does the Department of Health and Human Services, why do they purchase 4 million rounds over the last 8 years? Why are they stockpiling submachine guns at HHS? What about the 800,000 rounds purchased by the Social Security Administration? Is it hypocritical for politicians to criticize us for private gun ownership while the federal government is equipping itself, non-military agencies, with hollow point bullets and military-style equipment? Now, there are 10 top 10 takeaways from this, which I'm not going to get into now because it's about time to stop here. But again, what was it, It was 243?
Yes,
Yeah.
243, abuse of power.
Armor of Truth Live 243. Maybe we should pull this section out and make it a separate little video so all this information is not buried at the end of a show.
Sure.
Again, 200,000 plus federal officers with arrest and firearm authority, only 180,000 Marines. What do you think about that? Well, I've got a clip from the old Brad from Carolina channel many moons ago, where I made a video called "Who is Protecting Your Freedoms?" I just want to play a clip about the 1033 program here. I was fired up on this, and so pardon me if it seems a little too passionate. For protecting our freedoms. That job belongs to you. It's our job to do that. The government is good for a couple things: protecting our borders, protecting the nation from invasion, keeping the court systems fair and just. And that's about it. We don't need them for anything else. Who has removed more of your freedoms since 9/11? Let's look at a list of your freedoms which have not been protected. Number 1, the liberty to not be spied upon, which is essential to free society. At least that's what the founders believed. In the not too distant past, government agencies suspicious of citizens had to obtain warrants to investigate private citizens. They had to prove to a judge why they deserved to violate a person's sacrosanct privacy from the state. Multiple federal agencies, most notably the NSA, are enabled to surveil citizens all the time. The government's paranoid desire for total surveillance has only grown since 9/11. The FBI, which built the NSA's foundation for dragnet spying, continuously throws temper tantrums over its inability to spy on encrypted communications. The Department of Justice argued recently that it should have access to all Americans' emails. Who's taking your freedoms from you? Number 2, the liberty to not be harassed by law enforcement. Police departments not only conduct their own invasive spying with secret technology provided by the federal government, where police officers were once trusted to protect life, not all, but in some cases, they now threaten it. Currently, the risk of being killed by a police officer inside your own country is anywhere from 8 to 55 times greater than being killed by terrorists. That's since 9/11. More Americans have been killed by the ones who are supposed to be protecting them than were killed by terrorists. Other violations by police, constitutionally speaking, include a basic protection against unwarranted searches and seizures. Now, we're not talking about police officers. We're talking about the system, the overall system. Something has changed in the overall system and the training. Unwarranted searches and seizures are common now. An egregious seizure of the freedoms Americans still drunkenly celebrate on national holidays. Number 3, the freedom of movement and travel without being treated like a criminal. It is surprising that the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, formed after 9/11, is accepted as a vital element of modern society. Millions of Americans routinely huddle in cramped airport security lines, removing their shoes and flashing their private parts to security agents via x-ray machines so as to avoid more invasive gropings. Recently, 2 agents were caught tag teaming to grope attractive women. Who's protecting your freedoms? Unsurprisingly, these practices fail to find terrorists 95% of the time. So they don't work. They have a Look at this clip, success rate folks. in locating terrorists. They have a 100% Look at this. success rate in terrorizing
Savannah,
US
Georgia, folks. This is
Children in
not
wheelchairs,
Afghanistan.
elderly, and otherwise innocent Americans are
That's
forced to
Savannah,
endure
Georgia, at a train
violence
station.
to sexual harassment in any other environment. But remember,
Kidding me?
it's all for your safety and protection.
You know, that's
and
also
convenience.
about conditioning people to not have a sense of autonomy anymore. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you're, for the greater good, we're going to have to, paw you.
Right out, and fear, right? Fear people. Like, just think of that. Think of the little boy standing there being frisked at the train station in Savannah. What does he? I mean, how does this affect him as he grows up? Right, this little guy. What is? And what about these other Americans standing there doing it to other Americans? Come on now. Free nations fall when they abandon eternal principles such as justice, virtue, and respect for human dignity. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, people rejoice. But when a wicked man rules, the people groan. This is how important righteous leadership, grounded in moral principles, really is. When leaders and citizens alike forsake these principles, then societal decay is guaranteed. Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. This is a correlation between national prosperity and adherence to moral righteousness. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote in Democracy in America, he argued that the success of a democracy depends on the virtue and morality of its people. Without these, and education is very important too. Participation. You can't fall asleep. You can't say voting is the problem and then be mad when it all falls apart. Freedom will erode into tyranny if we just pretend like this isn't happening, or if we are angry about it but we're just not bothered enough to do anything. All you have to do is engage at your local level. You don't have to load a weapon and fire. Not yet. Praise God, not yet. Let's don't let it get to that. The downfall of free nations is accelerated when education systems fail to instill critical thinking, moral discernment, and an understanding of civic responsibilities. How many of us were trained in what the Constitution says and what it means? I wasn't. I had to learn that for myself. I didn't really get that in public school, not much. Hosea 4:6 says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. It's destructive. The consequences of this are destructive. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Tocqueville emphasized the importance of education in maintaining a healthy democracy. Without education, without participation, citizens are susceptible to manipulation. The moral decay and corruption of leaders and citizens leads to this, what we see happen, this kind of collapse that we're watching happen all around us now. Psalm 11:3, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? This is the critical nature of moral and ethical foundations. That's what sustains a nation. The fall of Rome serves as a historical example of how moral decay and corruption can lead to the collapse of a great empire. Edward Gibbon, a historian, detailed this in his work, how internal corruption and moral degradation contributed to the fall of Rome. What also, Summer, remember we covered this? What also contributed to the fall of Rome? These invasions, not invasions, but these assimilations of many different nationalities.
An influx of peoples.
Yeah.
Different peoples that destroyed the culture.
And it didn't happen overnight, but there was, after a period of time, there was no coherent culture, right? It was all a mixture of,
and when we're atomized, at every level, they've done that with gender, they've done that with family, and they're doing that with culture, and that atomizes and fractures. And then after that, they can just tell you what reality is.
That's right. That's a good point. Why do the wicked prosper, right? That's a question that's puzzled theologians, philosophers, and believers for centuries. But the Bible gives us insight to understand what's going on. Look, we don't need to be crying, shivering. We don't need to be fearful. Fear of man, fear of all this, that's a trap. God is still on the throne. It's not like he's turned his back. It's not like this is out of control as far as God's concerned. There is something in this that will work for the good of his people. And that's our focus, remember? That's what we said in the last show. Jeremiah 12:1, righteous are you, O Lord, when I complain, when I cry out to you, yet I would plead my case before you. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all who are treacherous thrive? God responds by revealing the eventual judgment and downfall of the wicked. No weapon formed against you will prevail, not ultimately. The fall of a free nation is driven by this departure from eternal principles, this failure in education. It all leads to moral decay. Mainly, it's the departure from eternal principles, from God's law. The prosperity of the wicked is temporary. It serves as a test of faith. It serves as an opportunity for the righteous to exercise discernment. Free people maintain their freedom by remaining vigilant, by upholding moral and ethical standards, and by ensuring proper education and a culture of righteousness. Ultimately, what that means is what we've been trying to say here now for a couple of weeks, is that Americans are the greatest threat to American sovereignty is Americans. Americans are the greatest threat to America.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. That's it. That's it. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We hope you've enjoyed this. Please check out our Substack. We've got 2 new articles up there. Check out this Mother of Woke, How Civil Rights Poisoned America. We'll show you a couple more right quick on the way out here. Our newest article, Regionalism. The threat is not to national sovereignty. The threat is to local autonomy. We hope that we've made that clear for you tonight. Quote James Roguski here. Stop allowing yourselves to be deceived.
Yeah, can I just read that regionalism
Go ahead.
The concept of regionalism is often presented as a pragmatic solution to global challenges through cooperation that enhances economic stability and security. However, regionalism, as it is being implemented by Western interests, is the intermediate step between nationalism and globalism. It's a step-by-step transfer of rights that starts on the local level. So definitely check out that article. It's really good.
It starts locally. That means that's where our fight is. Our fight's not on the internet. Our fight's not with the who. Let's go ahead and get that thing ended for sure, but that's not where our threat, our main threat is. Truth is not a movement. Okay? Truth is not a movement. Patriotism is not a feeling. Patriotism is not a pep rally. Patriotism is not a YouTube video. And so in the alt media, the obsession with relevance and being first, getting the most clicks, that has derailed reasonable discourse. It has sabotaged the foundational purpose of having an alternative media in the first place.
Well, and a lot of it, that is deliberate, and we know that.
Oh yeah, there's definitely an operation there. Jeremiah 5:30 and 31. An appalling and horrible thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests rule at their discretion, and my people love it so. But what will you do when the end comes? Let's stop taking the bait. Let's stop being mesmerized by the circus of 24/7. The onslaught of fakes, frauds, and grifters in the alt media who are eager to seduce their support. And let's get busy in our own backyards. Let's take care of our homes. All right? Anything on the way out?
That's all, guys. Just make sure to, if you can, support Vodi Bakum and his book. It's brilliant. It will really bless you, and he deserves our help to help get the word out, because you know that they're trying to suppress that book. So please buy a copy if you can, buy 2 copies if you can, write a book review, an honest book review. Just give Vodi a hand, and we actually reached out to his team, and hopefully we will have Vodi on the channel soon, so please pray for that.
Yeah, pray for that.
That would be awesome.
It's possible. It might happen.
Yeah.
Okay, my friends, let me share this with you before we go. Please take a moment to like this video, share it, leave a comment. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. There's only one way that we can get this message to more people, and that's if you help us by engaging these videos. And it's free to do it. More than anything, download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. It's 100% free, and you'll get live notifications and a direct link whenever and wherever we go live. You get exclusive content, access to our articles, reports, and resources, Bible study podcasts. If you can support Armor of Truth financially, every donation or gift makes a huge difference. Any amount, folks. Use the AOT mobile app Give tab, or visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this here video. Set up a recurring monthly donation to help us plan for our future, if you can. So what are you waiting for? Come on, this was good. What are you waiting for? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app now. My name's Brad, and I'm joined by my talented and my lovely wife, Summer. And together, we're Armor of Truth, and we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
God bless you, my friends. We'll see you next time.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.